Hello everybody, I'm Nano, and I would like to say thank you all for giving me your time and just your patience for this whole thing to come out. And I'm joined by my partner in crime, Huma. Why can't I do this properly without it? So if you can't tell this is unscripted, Chuckles, you can say what you want right now. I'm just crackling like a madman.
Well, for one chuckling person to another, hello, I'm Chuckles. Worked with Nano a lot on this project. I hope you guys enjoy it. Make sure you guys like it. Honestly, this took one hell of a time to do, so you guys better like it. I'm just saying that much. So, but honestly, in regards, hopefully enough, you guys like it. You like some of the ideas.
Maybe
I'm gonna say at the moment, let me pass it to Nano.
sorry to cut you off there, but maybe even check out the series if you're interested enough. Or if you're a fan of Warhammer, you can just enjoy the list here. I really don't know what else to say after that. Just thank you all so much for your time. And any closing thoughts?
And Meg did nothing wrong.
Oh boy, now we just started a war, didn't we? It's finally fucking here! Hello everyone, I'm Nano, and I'm doing another one of these videos. Anyways, back on topic, for those of you who don't know me, I am pretty big into Warhammer.
Equip bayonets! Be ready for blood!
So, me and my friend, that being Chuckles, who practically now is my partner in crime, decided to do this because it was fun, at first. But aside from the pain I had trying to make this whole thing, let's get this damn show on the road.
Our duty as soldiers is to protect humanity, whatever the cost.
We are the angels of death. We are the blade drawn against the endless night. Nothing will survive our wrath.
That's not going to happen.
Master Chief versus Captain Titus. A simple yet fun start to this whole season. Now then, let's talk about the fight with it being Chief landing on the war-torn planet the Covenant Banish is fighting on. During this, the Ultramarines would be deployed on the planet as well, albeit after some intro like in Space Marine. Then you could have Chief and Titus meet. After that, you could have Titus meet Chief thinking he was some kind of guardsman with some new enhanced armor, before Chief explains somewhat who he is, only for Titus to maybe take this as a sign of something else and try to take him in for a questioning. However, Chief wouldn't go with this, and that could be your start for the fight. From there, have it be them fighting on an open battlefield. You see weapons all over the place during their fight, and Chief relying on them and using his grappling hook to grab them as well during it. Along with that, Titus can be constantly changing out his melee weapons and his main weapons as well, and for both of them, it would just escalate for what weapons they get their hands on even more. There could be a moment at the beginning where Titus is just ragdolling Chief around for a moment, only for Chief to stick a plasma grenade at Titus' helmet and just blowing it up, only for Titus not to be harmed by it and just remove the rest of the helmet. You can have another moment when Titus has a storm hammer and just sends Chief through a wall with it. After that, you could have a moment with Chief reaching for a gravity hammer, only for Titus to rush him down, only for Chief to avoid the storm hammer, only for Chief to retaliate back with the gravity hammer, sending him flying back. The one moment I really want to see is a clash between the power sword and the energy blade. Like, just show us them both pairing off each other or clashing against each other. Show us the sparks and electricity coming off of them. During their battle, it could have a war in the background. You can see the Banished, you can see the Covenant fighting the Guardsmen, then you can have either of them head over and just continue their fight there. And even during the fight, you can even have a moment where they both can have a decent amount of respect for each other. And that can lead to some nice banter between them as well. But back on topic, I think it's about time I got near the end of this thing. For Chief's death, it would be both of them just countering against each other. Chief would go to stab Titus in the chest with the energy blade, only for Titus to counter a strike and then use a charged up plasma pistol at the lower half of his body. After that, you could then have Titus stomp on Chief's head just to put him out of his misery, and then have Titus meet up with the rest of his squad soon after that. For Titus' death, we could where something like this would happen, but instead of the counter strike, he manages to stab Titus in the opening of his armor, only to grab a Spartan laser in the distance and charge it while Titus would make a run towards him. then only to get his head blown up by the laser as his body would fall, with Chief saying laser on his back and walking past it saying good fight soldier, and head off to whatever you want his objective to be. I don't fucking know. The track potential can be amazing with Space Marine's music and also Halo's music in combination, and even throughout the fight you can get in a little bit of banter between both of them.
You came very close this time.
So despite how I feel about the whole matchup itself, this is just an entertaining fight, honestly. Just a spectacle of two who can perform better in a sense. It could start with either of them meeting each other. I mean, either way, it practically go down the same. From there, you can have the fight constantly swap back and forth between their collections, and while Trizen's just strolling around, Brainiac is on to not having any of it and just sends his drones in to take care of Trizen. Only for those to get taken and just added to Trizen's collection. As it could then cut back to Brainiac's collection, where it's just showing Trizen using all sorts of Necron weapons against Brainiac at first, then using several Space Marine and Guardsman legions from his collection against him, only for Brainiac to quickly wipe them out, and you could have Trizen just sing what Brainiac's collection and power holds, and you could get away with making the line of
"Fine addition to my collection."
It can just continue to escalate from there with everything they do. Trizen unleashing the most random stuff out of his collection, like, I shit you not, you could pull anything out of that man's collection. And Brainiac's just tanking it and wiping it all out, just not giving a fuck about it. You can even have the environments constantly change during the fight, take place on all sorts of planets throughout any of their collections. And once I get back to their ships, I'm gonna pull a page out of Nemesis' book and have Trizen bring in a Tyranid Hive Fleet and just have it crash into their ships. And both of them get up and face each other again. This is where you can have Brainiac's true form come in. And Trizen now using everything, absolutely everything, ranging from his perfect copy of Fulgrim to the Quarks. And here's where you can have Trizen actually be serious about this. Now there's a lot more potential for all the callbacks you can have. I just hope for the death, if they ever do this, I hope for the death it has the bell Trizen threw back to the Drukhari just come out of nowhere and just end him. I don't know, I think that'd be a funny way to end the fight. Or have the bell just kill Brainiac for that matter. Either way, no matter who wins, one's gonna take the other's collection in the end. Overall, this fight has a lot of potential and fun bits you can have, and some okay banter between them. Gives the Spreader Blender team and give it a very techno-like track, and you already got the perfect match.
What more do you want from me? I gave everything I had to you.
The Doomslayer vs. Rabute Gilliman. Gilliman? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Two rage-fueled space marines who are both known for slaughtering many demons, from basic demons to demonic gods. Both served as the light of hope in Doom situations. Doom guys saved humanity from demons, and Gilliman saved the Ultramarines from an army of chaos. Both have become legends amongst their colleagues and were given the names of legends. What the fuck, who wrote that one? The Doomslayer and the Avenging Sun. Both are given mortality from divine entities, the Khan Maker and the Emperor of Mankind. Both were put into some kind of rest for a long-ass amount of time. Doomguy was sealed away in a sarcophagus, and Gilliman was killed in combat. Fuck you, Fulgrim. But were brought back when they were needed the most. Doomguy was released from the sarcophagus to fight the demons overrunning the USC base, and soon to be Earth. And Gilliman was resurrected to help in the battle against the Army of Chaos. Both fight demons with similar arsenals, and a special sword, the Crucible and the Sword of the Emperor. This is currently up there as one of my favorite MUs of the season that I worked on. It can also get away with a really fun start with Doomslayer arriving to a planet with Gilliman and a few Ultramarines on it. We're still going to be looking for some kind of relic while Gilliman and the Ultramarines are attacking like some traitors or demons. You can have Slayer come across the Ultramarines first before those are quickly dispatched of, and Gilliman makes himself known. And you can have him at first try to talk Slayer down, but that would only get worse from there. Slayer would just open fire on Gilliman, but Gilliman would just tank it all anyway. For this, I'd say Slayer would mostly be using the heavy assault rifle as Gilliman is using the hand of the minion just to fire at him. As that is happening, you can have Slayer mostly be dodging the bolter fire from Gilliman. After that, you can have to where he makes a charge with the shotgun and get you through a pillar, as Gilliman will walk towards him for a moment, only Slayer get back up and fire the ballista at him, and have Gilliman get knocked back for a moment. And you could also quickly follow this up with a bunch of rockets getting fired at him. You could then have Slayer just run up and bash away his armor and rip some pieces of it off, like his shoulder or arm. Before you can have Gilliman just grab Slayer and just slam him into the ground, just unloading like several bolter rounds in them with the Hand of Dominion. You can even make it look like he's putting dents in his armor with each shot he takes with it. Only for Gilliman to go and stomp on Slayer now and just Slayer just dash away from it. After he gets out of the way and gets back up, have him ready to Lucifer's Bane or the Super Shotgun. After that, you can have Doomslayer making a charge towards Gilliman, while Gilliman's still using a hand and moving forward, and also having the Emperor's Sword at the ready. As you can have Slayer using the environment constantly to avoid the bolter fire from Gilliman, using the pillars, using poles, whatever you want to do. As you can also have Slayer just loading round after round into Gilliman's armor, basically using any of his arsenal against Gilliman. Here we have Slayer make a charge from behind, where you can have the Sword of the Emperor come in and actually do damage to Slayer, where it can slash Slayer's armor, sending him into the ground. As Gilliman would go to stab him there, before Slayer would just avoid it, getting the heavy assault cannon out, and just using the micro missile attachments, and using those to give him a small moment to blind Gilliman. Before you can have Gilliman just swing the Emperor's Sword around for a moment, and Slayer can just begin opening fire with the chain gun. Gilliman can make a charge towards Slayer, the chain gun having no effect on him. In the moment you can have Gilliman go for a slash with the Emperor's Sword, you could have the chain gun's energy shield pop up and just block it, while still opening fire on him. You could then have Doomslayer swap to the shotgun and go with the sticky bomb attachment with it, as you can then have those just get launched at Gilliman to just knock him off balance. Then you can have Slayer run up and use Gilliman's Hand of Dominion and just shoot part of his helmet off, and then have Slayer rip the damn thing off. Then you can have him get slashed and then sent across the arena, with Gilliman rising up and staring down at Slayer. As you can see in the back, the Crucible is ignited and Gilliman's just walking towards Slayer, as Slayer would just be running towards him, as then you can get like the big blade clash between the Emperor's Sword and the Crucible. One way you could end it for either of them is Gilliman landing a fatal blow to Slayer's stomach, grabbing his head, and tearing his helmet off with the blade being forced upwards. It's not like the image on screen. Then crushing the helmet in his hand. Or for Slayer, is stabbed straight through Gilliman's chest and then being shot out of his face before tearing his head off and then leaving the area. Both of these can make a reference to the amazing art by Sunset or the second trailer ending for Death of Hope.
Like for like. Which part are you willing to give me? Do I walk the valley? Do I die alone? Am I first to sin as I cast this stone? Do I? The trigger, do I snap the bone? Do I suffocate? Do I send them home? Do I?
Sebastian Yarrick versus Malratic. High-ranking bitter leaders who are skillful soldiers who are also part of a group to punish and kill anybody who tried to take on their home field, the Pirates and Commissars. There are also nearly undefeated champions of war who lead their armies against otherworldly threats to them, and after a near-death experience, were remained to a cyborg-like people who use their enemy's weapon and gear as their new weapons. This is more of a story fight idea in this season, but for an idea like this to start, you can have it take place with the Imperium fighting on Helligan, with Yarrick and Radic leading it from the backlines at first. And you can see how desperately each side is trying to take it from the other. Helga's troops are making their advance forward, while the guardsmen are trying to make their advance upward to them too. But eventually, during this little war, you're gonna have the capital get stormed by the guardsmen. That's where you can have Yarrick and Radic meet face to face. There you can have Yarrick giving Radic a chance to surrender, only for Radic to shoot it down in an instant and have both of their men open fire upon each other. From there, the squads would probably take each other out, or you could have it to where both the leaders finish off the last remaining members of the squads they brought, leaving Yarrick and Radic the only two standing. From there, Radic would be going invisible and pulling mind games on Yarrick, while he's just getting fed up and annoyed with it. Would mostly be taunting Yarrick the whole time. But I think a neat idea they could show in the fight is just how predictable Radic is becoming for Yarrick, mostly showing Radic attacking from behind to get the upper hand, or just trying to attack from distance. However, for either of them, both would just be delaying the inevitable. Radic's ending could have him decloak behind Yarrick, stabbing him in the ribs, before Yarrick would try to take a swing to Power Claw, only to get his neck snapped right after. Or for Yarrick's ending, it could be something similar to Radic decloaking behind him, only to get the Power Claw jammed right into his stomach, then drop to the ground, then shot in the head with the bolter. This idea can be done in sprites or SFM, and has a lot of fun potential you can do with it. Like for the track, you could have something similar to Imperium, the only difference there is that the tone will be much darker, and you need to include a more Killzone feel to it. Now then, from the Commissar, let's go to the troops.
In life, war. In death, peace. In life, shame. In death, atonement.
Imperial Guardsmen versus Imperial Stormtroopers. For this idea, it needs to be like a full-on, like, war, like an army fight, with all sorts of Guardsmen factions, regiments, or legions. I don't know anymore. I've been heard of so many things I don't even know anymore. And all kinds of Stormtroopers being deployed around the whole battlefield. Except for this, I want to just show the pure scale this fight has, where you can see Guardsmen holding the line, Kriegsmen making their advance forward, Ogrins are entering the zone. During this, the Shock Troopers could be arriving, and moving forward, then you can have a switch to the Stormtroopers, where you can see them getting reinforcements, being Scout Troopers deployed on speeder bikes, and the Heavy Troopers arriving to the area, as well as mowing down some Kriegers. Then you can have the Ogrins just come in and take care of the Heavy Troopers with ease. Or you can also have it to where the Heavy Troopers are taking down some Ogrins. Have a moment where the Kriegsmen try to make a flank, only get ran over by some Scout Troopers, or have some Scout Troopers get blown up by the Kriegsmen grenades. In the distance, you can show the vehicles arriving from both sides. That can soon lead to both trenches getting infiltrated with those on the front line. Like, it just gets so chaotic. I don't see how you can go wrong. Hell, you can have a moment with Kriegsmen charging the Stormtroopers' trenches and beating shit out of them with shovels. Yes, I know they know these, but more shut the fuck up. But throughout this, I hope this shows the POV shots of each side entirely, just showing us the pure terror of it as well. With it being soldiers being shot up or blown to pieces, their POVs just show us the sheer brutality going on. And eventually, near the end, you're gonna have the Scions and the Sith Troopers appear, just showing these emotionless soldiers just killing each other. Throughout it, each side would be losing men and having to push forward like it's nothing in their war, each fighting down to the last man, and I think that could be a fun death idea, actually. Having it be like the battlefield filled with pure dust and debris all over, and showing us one lone guardsman and one lone stormtrooper, only just to show who will take the shot first. The guardsman winning would just be him walking forward and moving on like nothing would ever happen. And the same is going to be done for stormtroopers as well, because they're going to have to push on like nothing happened. They could have lost thousands of men, but have to keep moving forward, because that's war. This is my favorite idea because of the potential it can bring. It also has a horrifying side to it that many people wouldn't really think of. Hand this over to the Valender team and they can make this thing work amazingly. Also, go listen to Imperium. That track is fucking awesome. Now then, defeat the Lion.
This will be a momentous fight.
Lionel Johnson versus Flynn. Chosen swordsmen who were lower class in medieval places, Mikado and Caliban, but later on became high-rank captains/commanders of slayers at their home, Flynn being a top-ranked samurai and Lion being a Primarch Knight of the Dark Angels. But during this they found demonic entities were rampaging through their places and sought out on a crusade to slay them and restore peace back to their homes, by doing so not only saving their lands but also becoming saviors of multiple lands. There are also predecessors of well-known figures who had ended up falling during a war trying to/getting defeated by a great evil. So they tried to fix and to succeed over their past failure, and thankfully won at the end. Although Flynn succeeded and won, Lion fell in battle, but his Dark Angels won the war. And the Lion's body is in stasis in a chunk of Caliban, or more specifically, buried deep within the Dark Angels' mobile fortress monastery, the Rock. Connections aside, you could have this be a simple one-man army fight, with Flynn bringing out all sorts of demons to fight Lion, and Lion mostly brute forcing his way through most of them. One moment you can have in the fight is Flynn getting slashed back, having to catch himself with his sword in the ground. Then Lion charging after Flynn, only for Flynn to use Jack Frost as a meat shield. And right after you can have Flynn parry Lion's strike. Then you can have Daisoju use Fog Breath on Lion just to blind him, only for Lion to split the damn thing in half. Then you could have Flynn and Lion's blades clash again, except now you could add in a moment of respect towards one another, before you can have them get away from each other, only for Lion to give a laugh and giving Flynn a mention of gratitude. And you could have Flynn do the same thing, just before they start the fight again, showing them to be even in their swordsmanship, leaving Flynn to rely on his demons to get Lion off guard, and to give him an opening, only for either Lion just to tank it immediately or just keep swinging. You could have Flynn summon an Oni to help him out, and potentially get a hold on Lion, only for Lion just to brute force his way out of it and just beat the shit out of the Oni. Then you could have a Hellrider be a distraction for Lion, which gets taken in almost instantly, then have a Callisto's whip wrap around Lion's hand, and give Flynn an opening to land several strikes against Lion's armor. Then Lion breaking free of the Callisto and slicing it in half, then going for a slash against Flynn, only for Flynn to catch the blade. And then you can have a moment where Terminator damages Lion's armor and also blasts his helmet off, as he's going to attack the Terminator. Then it can cut back to Flynn using the item to heal himself and get ready, and Lion just cracked his neck staring him down with a small smile on his face, almost as if it were to show this is the greatest duel both of them have ever had. Then it could cut back to the fight where both of them are making a final charge towards towards each other, as Flynn would just be doing an all-out strike, attacking him wherever he could, and Lion could just be tanking it and retaliating back with his own strikes as well, showing a more savagely-like fighting style against Flynn now, and it could show how badly they were injuring each other during their clash, and then you could have it end with one final swords clash from either of them, where you can have Flynn stab Lion in the chest and everything fade to a crimson, with then just his black outlines. As for the color outline that's Lion, you could have white cracks start to form on it, with Lion giving Flynn one final thank you for this fight, before shattering to dust. And with Lion, you could have something similar happen, but instead it's a dark emerald color with them outlined as white, as Lion would just slash Flynn down the middle, as Lion would give Flynn a small salute. Adding on to how much potential this can have, the music would go together so damn well. Whereas with Lion, you can get more of a tribal-like tone to it, as well as bringing in a rock feel to it, Flynn could bring in a more orchestral and soothing side to it. Hell, you can even get some good choir bits in it if you wanted. Also, I think this could be done amazingly if hand-drawn. Now for the next idea, we had— wait, what the fuck? Hold on.
I want to poop the snoot.
Vulcan vs. Zorn. Characters who are essentially demigods with animalistic ties to them, who grew up in a volcano place for years. Orn being in a volcano, and Vulcan grew up on the planet Nocturne. And through the radiations of heat and flames, their skin turned into a dark astral look. But what came from this is them being one of, if not the greatest blacksmiths ever made in their series, whose main weapons are not only their great pyrokinesis, but their hammers they use for smithing. But also they are worshipped as kings and gods among their places, Orn with Freljord, and Vulcan with Nocturne. But unlike beings like them, they care deeply for their people and their works, and approve of their people and their predecessors' work as well. But later on they ended up fighting their demigods brothers, who are also kind of their rival, Volkbear and Conrad Curse. I don't know. Which made them fight in a long war/fight that caused world-ending and cataclysmic events. After the battle settled, and the people they loved died, it left them devastated and broken, and later on went missing for a while. Orn retreated into a cave for years, and Vulcan went into a coma. Until they're now finally woken up and lead their people through battles again, either through physical or spiritual means. Now, a way for this fight to start is to have it be them both crossing paths in Freljord. I cannot pronounce it to save my life. Where you can have it be just these two at first being incredibly nice, before you can have it change into something similar to All Might versus Might Guy, like seeing who between the two of them is a better blacksmith, before getting into their fight, which would mostly just be banter between them, and just both of them having fun in their battle. You can even have it where they're showing off their own craftsmanship during the fight, even admiring one another's work. Then you can have a moment where Vulcan just slams the Dawnbringer down, causing a massive earthquake and a giant rupture, as you can have Orn just having a laugh before pulling a My Turn moment, and just slamming his anvil-looking hammer down into the ground as well, causing an earthquake and rupture much greater than Vulcan, with magma spewing out of the rupture, as you can have Vulcan make a jump towards Orn only gets swatted away by Orn's regular hammer, just sending him back into the ground. You could show a moment with Warden summoning the Forge God, only for Vulcan to catch it and chuck it right back at him, only for Orn to headbutt it right back at Vulcan again, then Vulcan just shatters it to pieces. The funny idea you can have in the fight is Vulcan and Orn repairing their weapons, and they're just having like small talk as they're doing it. After that, you can have them get back into the fight. Another idea you could implement here is Orn using Spell's Breath to burn the whole area they're fighting in, only for Vulcan just to power through and using Yeet him. Or where Orn would use Volcanic Rupture and get Vulcan up on the top of it, and then just smash Vulcan right through it where it could start back at where they first met, back in the Solitude. Then for the ending, you could have it follow something like Saitama vs. Popeye, where the opponent's weapon would shatter. For Vulcan's ending, you could have it be the sheer power he throws into his one swing, just completely obliterating Orn. Or for Orn's ending, it's just him destroying the Dawnbreaker, then just crushing Vulcan into the ground. But the best part here between the two of them, no matter who you have win, they're both gonna live no matter what. And Vulcan would probably teach Orn how to play Battle Maze 40 million. What? I had to include a TTS reference somewhere in this script. For the track potential for this, you could have it follow something similar to Mighty, except give it more of that blacksmith-like style. You could even throw vocals in there along with a choir for that matter. Make it an orchestral style and you've got something perfect. And you can even give this as SFM or Blender Team if you want this to really work out more. Now, let's remove the perfect and go for something more carnage-inducing. The Tyranids vs. the Space Warrior Bugs. I shit you not, that's what they're called. This idea brings everything in one for both the warrior bugs and the Tyranids. And by that I mean you practically had to give them everything. Meaning everything can be utter batshit craziness. Both starting out with the standard units of both sides, before it could escalate to the bigger units of each side. For the start, you could have the bugs making advances through gene stealers at first, only to be pushed back by Tyranid warriors, or by termagants, just showing each side just constantly killing each other, even with the lower ones. But the best part they're going to be showing about this is the sheer utter carnage shown between the two species. You could have a tanker bug rise from the ground, leaving a massive crater with Tyranids falling in, only for that to be just quickly torn apart by a Carnifex. Maybe have some of the Rhino bugs go through some of the Tyranids like the Termagants or the warrior class. You can have the Rhino bug get caught by a Harspec, or have it get grabbed by a Toxicrutin. Either way, the poor Rhino bug's getting torn apart. You could have some Tiger bugs make a rush too close to the outskirts of the battle, only for a Lictor just to tear them apart. Maybe have a Grenader bug get too close to a Carnifex, only for the Carnifex and the bug to go Then on the ground, you can have a shot where the camera's looking up towards the sky where you can see a Tyranid Hive Fleet and an Ice Bug about to collide into each other. But near the end, I hope they can show us a fight between the Super Tank Bug and the Swarm Lord, where at first it's showing the Super Tank Bug just destroying all kinds of Tyranids. Then you can have to where the Swarm Lord comes in and starts demolishing the Super Tank Bug. And it can also be the Super Tank Bug destroying the Swarm Lord as well. But for either side you have win, it's just going to be each of them tearing each other apart no matter how you look at it. The track could be almost feral-like, as it's just representing both the Space Warrior bugs and it's also representing the Tyranids in just their pure carnality. Now from carnage, let's go to something, can I say this?
It's Slanesh Patrol!
Maester, you mind if I get the anti spray for this one? Thanks. Oh boy. Slanesh versus the Leviathan. Eldritch gods of pleasure that have droves of former human turned demon servants. Both have an associated artifacts with corruptive powers, the Layer Blade and the Levant configuration. Both can change into any form they desire. Both also exist in an incomprehensible realm filled with temptation and ironic punishments. You kinky fucks. Both are often flanderized as being sex/BDSM gods. I wish I was making that up. Anyway, back on topic before Slanesh demons raid my house, this fight would follow more of a story-like structure, with some of the Emperor's children, or Noisebrains Slanesh has, and most likely would have collected it during like some kind of raid. Once they would arrive back in the realm of Slanesh, you know the Noisebrains or Emperor's children would let the curiosity get the better of them, and then try to solve the Lament configuration. And once you have it open, you can have some of the Cenobites take the Noisebrains or take some of the Emperor's children with them, and leave the gateway there, which would lead to some of the demons of Slanesh invading it, then encountering the Leviathan, which would then take them away in an instant. And then we can have Slanesh come into play here, with it sensing the Leviathan's mere presence and then tearing its way into the Leviathan's realm, where the two gods would face each other, as the Leviathan's leagues of Cenobites would engage both sides of the Chaos Marines and the Daemons of Slanesh. The thing I think would be neat to show is just the Leviathan changing its form to something more with Slanesh, as if it was a show of mockery. As for when the Leviathan does change its form during the fight, you could have the realm of Slanesh also be merging into the realm of the Leviathan, as it could then cut to Slanesh and the Leviathan fighting around the war, even to where you can have it be both of their true forms make an appearance among the two, which would then lead to one of them corrupting the other, where the Leviathan is now changing to look more and more Slanesh-like, and for Slanesh to actually take up more of the Leviathan's abilities. But there's one thing I really hope they can add throughout the fight, is just showing who's being more predominant in the fight. I feel very nervous saying that. As you can see with the realm of Slanesh, it beginning to tear at the seams, or with the Leviathan's realm, it's beginning to shatter, or show one side's armies or legions doing better than one another. Maybe even some of their own servants changing. Near the end of their fight, you're going to have it to where one corrupts the other, to where the Leviathan would then corrupt the realm of Slanesh, and even Slanesh himself, and the Chaos Marines and Daemons of Slanesh would be changing into a more Cenobite-like look. While Slanesh's side, you could have it be corrupting the Leviathan's realm, and even corrupting some of the Cenobites into, well, let's just say Slanesh's very own torture posse. Maybe even putting the Leviathan out. Wait, what the fuck, Chuckles?! I'm not even gonna joke, but that was all unscripted. Live nano reaction be like. Anyways, you could have it to be a 2D episode with a unique track. I'd rather not go into what it could be like. I just want to get on with this thing. Anyway, now let's get some more DACA while we're at it. The Orcs of 40k versus the Gmod admins. Armies of powerful entities with reality manipulating abilities that consistently cause all kinds of havoc and chaos within their realms, whether intentional or not, oftentimes using machinery and weaponry that shouldn't work but does despite looking like literal trash. Also, both armor comes from games that are highly modifiable and encourage fan creativity. That one did not age quite so well. Their main differences come in the form of admins are often peacekeepers and entities of order rather than chaos, but oftentimes fall into chaotic tendencies, while orcs are chaotic 24/7, and a little can be done to change this mindset. It could be described that admins are corruptible, while orcs are incorruptible. This is where season it's come Dude, what the fuck am I doing anymore? I like for this to start on an accident with the orcs finding a way into some random Gmod server. Poor bastards. And the admins see the orcs as new players to welcome them and to tell the orcs to change their skin, only for the orcs to just laugh at them and carry on. And shortly after this, you could have an orc shoot some random player. As the admins would appear again, there would be a lot, and I mean a lot more orcs. We're talking full-scale WOG. And that could just keep showing more and more orcs flooding into the server, meaning the admins now have to take pure action. From there you can have it be something similar to Blackout Apocalypse, but instead it's just the admin relying on everything they had to deal with the orcs while they invade the server. Then once the admins start no-clipping around, you can have the Storm Boys show up, then you can have it to be where they both take each other out. Then you can have the Weird Boys show up and just cause mayhem like vomiting warp energy towards the admins when they get close, or just empower other orcs around them. Or just have that one Weird Boy that just explodes because he just couldn't channel out the warp power in time and all the other orcs just start laughing at him. Another idea, you could have some Fly Boys fly right into, or go right through, or even blow up some admins. And for the admins, you can have them then relying on their most chaotic weapons, like the tool gun and the admin gun. With the admin gun, they just start mowing down the orcs and just blowing them up as well. Or have some admins using the tool gun, bringing in all sorts of explosives. Then you can have it blow up any type of orc vehicle. Hell, even blow up the fucking Stompa if you wanted to bring that in. Hell, after you have the Stompa blow up, you can have some of the orcs run out of it just screaming, well, what do you think their iconic thing is? They just charge in and die, even throwing some squigs like Molotov cocktails. And it's just going to show how much the server has fallen into chaos. Then soon enough, you can have the War Boss come in, where you can have an admin with a Banehammer no-clip towards him. And then just a few other admins with admin guns, tool guns, and maybe an Infinity C4 just to match it. As each side is just mowing down, as each side is just killing each other constantly. As each side is just unleashing utter hell upon one another, just mowing down each of them. Hell, you can have some admins respawn then get back into the fight. There's another idea I have for this, but it makes no sense. Where you can see an orc seeing an admin just typing /kill into the menu, only for the orc to say, "That won't work on us." I'm never doing an orc voice again. And literally have it do jack shit to the orcs, as the orcs would just be running around in the server. Or you can have /kill orc, as he has it to then just scrap the whole server, and then make a new one. Despite how stupid of an idea this idea is so fucking perfect for the amount of utter sheer destruction and chaos this fight would bring. I really don't see how this couldn't be a spectacle to watch. Especially since you can have the track be something metal, but also match something like Deadpool vs. The Mask. And if you were to put this whole thing in Blender, you basically get one of the most chaotic and stupid fights of all time. As for our next idea, I don't think it needs any introduction.
Good enemies is hard to find.
Ghazghkull Magor Thraka vs. Thrall. I really think this one doesn't need an introduction. To begin things off, the fight would start with Ghazghkull leading his walk through space, until they see the planet Azeroth and soon invade it. They would raid Azeroth for a bit until they stumble upon the Horde, where they would think it would be a walk in the park to beat until they hear for the Horde. And a thing of Tauren, elves, trolls, and even goblins and orcs appear, as Ghazghkull would soon say, "Look at those gits!" I can't do an orc voice, I'm sorry. As that could be where the clash begins. Or for Thrall's side of things, you can make it to where it could play as a regular day of the Horde, until Thrall would see meteors crashing onto the planet, and would then launch his sword to investigate the crash. But when he's almost there, you could have it be he finds other orcs, but they look and act much more savage, along with their weapons alongside them being stained with blood. Thrall would see that the meteors were from something else, and these orcs were something much more. And how violent they all were acting, he could have viewed this as an act of war. And it's also where you can have him scream for the Horde again. Then you can have it to be where Thrall charges towards Ghazghkull, about to swing his hammer at him, only for Ghazghkull to catch it, and him just to laugh it off, only saying, "You need more than a wee little hammer to take me on." Only for Thrall just to respond by, "I don't rely on my own strength alone. My power is all around me, and you." Then you can have his eyes turn into electric sparks and then summon a bolt of lightning strike Ghazghkull and then headbutt him. Then it can show Ghazghkull realizing that Thrall's not just some weak fodder, that he can one-shot, and can show that he's a serious threat. Then having a cackle and say, "Come on now, show me what you're really good." This is where you can also show Thrall going all out. You could show Thrall using giant rocks to crush Ghazghkull, or you could show him making a lava-like earthquake killing a lot of the orcs. You could show him making tsunamis after that. Then you could have him teleporting around, pressuring Ghazghkull. and is just going to town with the hammer and just bashing the shit out of Ghazghkull, only for it just to show Ghazghkull just tanking it all and laughing like a madman, as he's holding his own ground. But it can show he's just slashing at Thrall with his claw, and him gunning down anything he sees in his way. Hell, you can have him gun down anything Thrall throws at him. It can show Ghazghkull just destroying the boulders Thrall can make appear, and ram right into Thrall. You could have Ghazghkull using a Gretchen as a meat shield against Thrall's fire and electricity. Just all around, Ghazghkull and Thrall are fighting like a warrior versus a god, and Ghazghkull's getting more excited and having so much fun while fighting Thrall, now saying stuff like, "Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about!" Also, the Horde and the boys are now on equal footing and going at each other, almost like it's a bloodbath of orcs, and you could probably include some of the totems there, like wind, fire, earth, lightning totems that can amp Thrall or give him stuff in the fight. You could have a bit where Ghazghkull pries up one of the totems out of the ground and straight up smacks Thrall with it. Now for the end where you can have Thrall shooting some kind of lightning bolt at Ghazghkull, only for Ghazghkull to shoot some kind of explosive at Thrall, but could show a moment where either of them see their mortal enemies or arch rivals. Thrall seeing Garrosh, and Ghazghkull seeing Yarrick. From the ability clash, it would set off a shockwave killing a shit ton of their armies. After a cloud dispersed, you could see a massacre with Thrall and Ghazghkull heavily damaged. And here's where your ending can come into play. Thrall decides to end this whole duel or war, and proceeds to use the magma and rocks to grab Ghazghkull and hold him down, but Ghazghkull blows it away and tries to end things himself, and proceeds to charge at Thrall. Only for Thrall to lift his hammer of doom and say,
Storm, earth, and fire, heed my call.
Thrall probably hasn't said it that much, but that's too much of a bad sign to pass down using. And lightning and thunder eclipse the sky and clouds as it just charges up the hammer, as well as the other elements charging it up as well, and leaves them in the air with the wind powers he was bestowed, and slams it down on Ghazghkull's head, and it would either end with Thrall successfully landing an attack with the hammer, not only getting a headshot, but a blast kinda similar to Batman's death in Batman vs. Iron Man, but you could see the headless suited Ghazghkull that is charted and destroyed, then Thrall saying, "Rest easy, war boss," to the remains of Ghazghkull. While with Ghazghkull's ending, it would be something similar, except Ghazghkull would pierce Thrall's stomach before he can land the attack, and then rips Thrall's lower half off, and then its guns blowing up his top half, leaving just his head, and then grabbing Thrall's head, then crushing into a bloody face as blood drips from his claws. But regardless of who wins, you can have it end with the leader leading the loser's army. This fight would be amazing done in 3D, handed over to the SFM team, or the Blender team for that matter. Also, do I really need to go over Warhammer of Doom?
What would you know of struggle, perfect son?
Angron vs. Atrocitus. Both lost people they cared for, Angron's gladiators and Atrocitus' family, due to cause and indifference of an authority figure. Guardians making the manhunters that destroyed his world, and the Emperor beaming Angron off his planet, leaving his gladiators to die. Both later on commit the entirety of their being to a source of power fueled by rage and blood, the Red Lantern Ring and Khorne. Both are fueled by rage, and have similar personalities as far as the angry and lust anger go, but both are some of the most feared in their galaxy by their rage merely alone. I think any way for this to start is Angron on a battlefield just tearing apart any type of Xeno in his way, only for Atrocitus to appear shortly after, offering Angron a Red Lantern Ring due to his pure rage, only for Angron to turn his offer down by just slashing at him, both annoying and angering Atrocitus from that. Then it could show Atrocitus holding Angron in a construct, only for it to be shattered by Angron, as Angron would just make a charge towards Atrocitus, and Atrocitus would do the same thing. The main thing you need to show here is just the pure rage of both of them, where you can also have the fight constantly switch up for who's leading it. For one moment in the fight, you can have Angron just shrugging off all of Atrocitus' attacks, breaking through all his constructs, and even attacking Atrocitus himself. For when Atrocitus controls the fight, you can have a moment similar to his super move in Injustice 2, showing the environment changing to a more hellish landscape, and you can even have him bring in the bull and attack Angron with it, only for the bull just to get punted away. That's another thing I hope they would show during this fight, just showing the environment changing as their battle rages on. There can be a moment where they both get to a mountain, then both of them just get into an arm lock and break it, and then once you have their fist collide, you can have a shockwave just shatter the mountain in half, just showing the pure rage in both of them. And when you can have Angron becoming his demon Primarch form, just have him be utterly demolished now. And then you can have Atrocitus just take Angron to the core of the planet they were fighting on, only for the planet to just explode. It could show Atrocitus, who was blasted away from the explosion, just looking at the smoke now. As in the distance, you could have Angron just re-emerge as his Daemon Primarch form now. Basically what you're going to see on screen. Then you can have their fight escalate even into the warp, where it just shows Angron towering over Atrocitus in every way, like a shot similar to Dracula vs. Ganon, where it can show Angron going right through his own constructs and then throwing him around the warp, but would also be feeling Atrocitus as well. Then near the end you could have it be a final charge towards one another, with Atrocitus having made some kind of blade to match with Angron, and once you have their blades clash, you could soon cut to one of them stabbing each other in the chest. And this is where you can have the death go one of two ways for either of them. For Angron's death, have it be once he's stabbed in the chest, the blade will then be removed, and then it could switch to any type of weapon Atrocitus would want, like a battle axe, any of that kind. And Atrocitus could just go flying throughout the warp, to where it can go to the realm of Khorne, where Atrocitus just stabs Angron to the ground, and then the battle axe changes to a pair of scissors, and then cuts him in half. Yeah, I know, obvious callback. Only for the Trillion with Atrocitus grabs top half of Angron and pulls his Justice 2 super move finisher. And for Atrocitus' death, you can have to where the same thing happens, except once it's impaled into the realm of Khorne, Angron just starts tearing apart Atrocitus limb by limb. And then you can see Atrocitus' ring rise up to Angron, only for Angron just to crush it. The track for this could be metal as hell, and the fight could be done in sprites perfectly. Now then, let's move on to a more rottish environment.
Do not be frightened. You will not die. You will never die.
Nurgle vs. Takato Maruki, two characters who after an awakening of some kind showed what they truly were, Nurgle being awoken during the Enslaver Plague, and is literally the god of plagues for that matter, and Azazel's awakening within Maruki to help him save Rumi. However, despite both of their kindness, deep within, they hold something far worse. Nurgle is the embodiment of decay, stagnation, and despair, and Maruki is just depressed inside constantly and was in such pain he couldn't grieve. Both offer a new purpose or life to those who accept them, Nurgle letting those who join him rot eternally in his garden in peace and joy, and Maruki offering those who accept his new world a new life, without grief. Both bring an equivalent to change, but in opposite ways. Nurgle brings stagnation, yet brings the result to face the inevitability of change. And Maruki brings life a change to be less painful upon people, yet leads to a road worse than what he promises. Both also are contrasts to nature and will. Nurgle being a literal circle of life and death, while Maruki wants to lead everyone an almost perfect and painless life. And their motive to move forward and one to stay in place, being change and stagnation. A way for this to start is Nurgle sensing a new type of power, that being the metaverse, and send some of his demons to check it out. While for Maruki, his could take place at his palace before sensing something enter it, being the demons of Nurgle. Before seeing the portal open to the realm of Nurgle, as the demons would attempt to attack Maruki before he would summon Azazel in. After he takes out the demons, you could have him look over to the portal and just see a realm just alive and rotting, and him just disgusted just looking at it, but would see something watching over in the far distance, that being Nurgle himself, before he would change Azazel into Adam Kadmon, as Maruki would be leading Adam from Adam's own palm, as he would move throughout the realm of Nurgle. As it could show Adam moving throughout the realm of Nurgle and just stepping on Nurglings, Plague Rains, or any kind of demon you want, also show all of them using everything they can against Adam to no effect. As for the demons and Plague Rains that attempted to slash at Adam's feet, have it to where they burn up, and even to where with each step Adam takes, it's burning the realm of Nurgle. But this is also where you can have Nurgle begin to interact with Maruki, and to where you can have them both argue their philosophies. And soon after you begin to have Nurgle's presence be known, the greater demons, or the great unclean ones of Nurgle, only for them to try and make their attack on Adam, only for Maruki to have Adam use Original Light and just scorch everything around them. You can even make it look like it scorched a hole in the whole realm of Nurgle, as Maruki would just keep pushing onward. However, you can then have a moment where Nurgle realizes Adam's one weakness. He is very vulnerable when he attacks. After this, once Maruki has Adam attack or use Revitalized Soul, you could have a Great Unclean One grab him and chuck him through a portal. That would cause them both to land within the Garden of Nurgle, where the man could now face the god, as it could just show Nurgle stirring a cauldron of all sorts of diseases, while he could just mention Maruki's ignorance in the form of his ideals. Right after that, you can have the I am thou, thou art I moment come in. As right after that, you can have some Great Unclean Ones appear around Maruki, while it now begins to approach Nurgle. After you have Maruki deal with the Great Unclean Ones, that is where you can have the deaths come in for both. Once Maruki reaches Nurgle, he would just punch a hole right through Nurgle, just incinerating him, as the realm would slowly begin to change into Maruki's own vision, as he would now be the god of that whole realm. While for Maruki's death, it'd basically be almost the same thing for him winning, except a few moments after he incinerated Nurgle, he would just fall to his knees as you can just see cracks begin to form over the body of Adam Kadmon. After that, you can soon show Maruki beginning to rot from inside Adam, before it can show the body of Adam corroding and rusting away. Then Nurgle appearing once more just staring staring down upon what Marky has now become, only to ask one simple question: how do you feel? Only for the word happy to escape what was once Marky, as Nurgle would just smile, going back to stirring his own cauldron again. This fight's track could be very unique, where it could be a mix of Marky's theme mixed in with ego death, except give it a feeling of dread with it. It would also be pretty neat if you would give it to the SFM or Blender team for this. Now let's fortify the season up for a moment.
Discipline, duty, unyielding will.
Rogel Torn vs. IDW Optimus Prime. Two stoic and heroic leaders who help lead the good of their own races against all sorts of evils. It's Warhammer, almost anything in the Imperium is Xeno, and Decepticons. But they weren't always leaders, they were once regular men on harsh planets. Both would become part of a cause in a way to help their worlds, Rogel being a Primarch and joining the Imperium, and Orion Pax joining the All-Black cause. And when they first met their rival in a sense, they both got their asses handed to them. Rogel losing to Perturabo, and Pax to Megatronus. In time, after their wars simmer down, both would become great friends with their rivals, only for them to turn evil and have to face them again, Megatronus becoming Megatron, and Perturabo becoming a demon prince/traitor Primarch. And this would lead them to fight on for centuries, and would result in them dying at some point, Optimus at first dying to Megatron, and Rogel dying aboard the Black Crusade's warship. However, they were remembered for everything they had done, and also their leadership. But both would be presumed alive again as their bodies were found, Optimus being saved by Ratchet, and Rogel's body being taken to Phalanx. This fight could almost have a might versus might situation, but throw in a bit of Obi-Wan versus Kakashi at the start, being one does something that would get the other one to be suspicious and attack, which in this case would most likely be Prime getting something that would get Rogel suspicious of Prime entirely, as at first you could have Rogel firing the ornate bolter at Prime, with little effect as Prime would just use the Ion Blaster, leaving Rogel just to avoid it, and then you can have a moment where the Storm's Teeth clashes with the Energon Axe, where you can have Rogel either parry or counter the Energon Axe, and even showcase the sheer strength the Primarch possesses. You can have Prime pull a similar move to a special in the Transformers Devastation, only for Rogel just to catch his fist, as the sheer force from it would just shake the environment, and then you can have it to where Rogel just eats Prime away. Then it can show Prime transforming and rushing Rogel down, only for Rogel to either catch it or Prime just ram him through a mountain. Soon after you can have it to where Rogel is just tanking through everything Prime throws at him, to where you can have it to where Prime just throws Rogel through a tank or something, and then it could get to a battlefield area. And this is where you can have Rogel's tactician mind come into play, as Rogel can now be using his environment to get the upper hand over Prime. Then it can just show how much the environment is being damaged as well during their battle, as it could also reflect the damage on them as well. Prime having cracks all over him, and Rogel's armor is just damaged to high hell, and looks bloody and beaten. As for the ending, have it end with the Matrix leadership just blasting Rogel, but instead he just powers through it by his sheer will and strength, and to where he's moving towards Prime. With Rogel's sight, you could have it to where he makes it towards Optimus Prime, and would just punch the Matrix leadership, just causing a massive explosion, where it would show Rogel standing over a desaturated Optimus Prime, as he could give him a salute of some kind. For Prime's case, you could have it to where Rogel is about to punch the Matrix, only for the Matrix just to obliterate Rogel, only leaving a piece of his armor behind. This fight can have a lot of fun, and it can show both of their personalities real well, even their leadership. And the track could be a mix of techno and rock. Now then, let's get to the carnage.
If this is all that remains of the honor of the World Eaters, then I am glad to be called their betrayer.
Karn the Betrayer vs. Cosmic Ghost Rider. Both were once high-ranking killers who went by different aliases, Karn the Bloody and Frank Castle / the Punisher. However, during a galactic war that left a shit ton of people dead, most of which were iconic figures in each verse, sadly, they made a deal / join with demon-like figures, Angron and the World Eaters, and Frank Castle making a deal with Mephisto to become Ghost Rider. But after doing this, they would slowly lose their sanity and completely go insane. Karn because he had the Butcher's Nail implanted into him, and CGR had no one to kill and was very lonely. Later on they found a galactic being and after a while became their new servant / champion, Karn becoming the champion of Khorne, and CGR serving Galactus and then later Thanos. And also what came from this is also them gaining their ruler's powers. Also after the fall of a previous ruler they served, a new ruler with a king to godly status, to take souls in their name. Karn joined Khorne after the corruption of Angron, and CGR joined Thanos after Thanos killed Galactus. They both use weapons that were granted to them by their previous ruler, and their weapons are also chain demonic weaponry from the previous ruler. Both have died, then come back, and are practically immortal, and travel through space and time to cause havoc as newly remade champions of Hell. Oh yeah, did I also mention they're fucking insane and angry? Now may I just say how raw this shit would go as a fight? The start of this can have CGR's own curiosity getting the better of him, where he can have him land on the planet infested with orcs fighting with demons of Khorne, with Karn being somewhere on there. And once you have CGR land on the planet, you could have him incinerate all the orcs he landed on, then have it where Karn sees him, and then have the Butcher Snail go ballistic. Then you have it where CGR is now just guns blazing, mostly firing his Scorchers at Karn while he's just tanking it and rushing down to CGR, with CGR just avoiding hits from their Gore Child without any issue before Karn would just grab him and reference this shot from Lobo vs. Ghost Rider, and then have Karn just scream out blood for the Blood God, then chucking him through his own Berserkers and Demons, where it can knock down or kill some of them. Then Karn would begin the rush at CGR again, only for CGR to hurl his chain around Karn's head, wrap it around his neck, then swing him through all the Berserkers he brought into the planet, and end up right through a Dreadnought, and just shows CGR having a laugh from that. And hell, you can end up with something similar to that with Karn grabbing the chain instead, and then just summon more Berserkers later on, only for CGR to blow them all to Kingdom Come, only for it to then end with CGR throwing Karn into a star, and for it just to blow up as he watches. Just about when you can have CGR lead the blast, Karn can just get propelled back, taking CGR off his house cycle and crashing into a plane like a meteor, and just put a giant crack in the plane along with a crater. Right after that, you could have CGR calling his bike back. Soon after, just to attempt to knock Karn back down, but then you can have Karn rip the thing in half, or slash it in half with the Gore Child. And you can get away with a funny moment with CGR complaining about Karn destroying his bike, only for him just to get grabbed by Karn, then having a portal open where his Zoom just chucked right through, where you can then have him get thrown right through a mountain in the realm of Khorne. Once in there, have some Berserkers appear to start beating the shit out of CGR for a moment, and then have Karn show up just slashing at CGR with the Gore Child, even killing some of his own men. This is where you can have the Phoenix Force come in and just nuke the Berserkers and Karn in the area, causing a massive crater, but would just send Karn flying back. This will leave Karn beyond pissed off, and also staring down at CGR, while CGR is just taunting Karn about grabbing his skull, as Karn is just shrugging off the Phoenix Force flames, just making his way towards CGR. This is where you can have the death come in with CGR's Penance Stare, or have Karn just tank everything. To start with CGR's side, have the Penance Stare just incinerate Karn entirely, except for his skull. Or Karn just tanks it, bashes him into a mountain, then soon rips him to pieces and then raising the skull up in victory. This is just a bit of the potential you can get away with for this fight, and you can have a lot of fun banter with them, with one of them basically just getting more and more pissed off as the fight goes on, versus literally a man who's enjoying a fight. Adding on to the fact this track could just be pure metal, and you can even get an amazing 3D fight to go with this from the Blender team. And let's go the opposite route of Khorne for something a bit more deceptive.
An interesting question, asshole!
Tzeentch vs. Shuma Gorath, Eldritch tentacle beings who are a part of a Chaos group where they exist in between realms, and they are part of 4 of them, the Chaos Gods, and the Many-Angled Ones / the Old Gods. Later they came to conquer Earth, but later on they were banished to another dimension by beings who held great power, Sizneg and the Emperor, who later on try to return to the dimension they were already banished from and conquer it, but always get repelled back by the one who banished them and their predecessors, Doctor Strange and Space Marines, Gilliman, and basically a majority of the Imperium. They're also high-level reality warpers who are so powerful they make demons and gods look like ants in comparison. And lastly, they were able to exist in different medias, and them and their group conquer and rule the realities. Shuma Gorath and Conan the Barbarian and rules the Cancerverse, and Tzeentch lives in Warhammer 40k, Fantasy, and Sigmar, and rules and conquers Warhammer Fantasy. The way this fight could start would be a similar situation with Dracula vs. Ganon, with one coming to take the other's realm entirely, but I think Shuma would fill that role perfectly. And Tzeentch's curiosity would get the better of him entirely, and would bring Shuma to his own realm, where it could then escalate to the Cancerverse invading the realm of Tzeentch. And then the two would come face to face, where Tzeentch would most likely be clashing with Shuma throughout everything in 40k, Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, and everywhere throughout Marvel as well. And while they fight, it can also constantly change animation styles as well to match the scene they're fighting in, to show a side of the other madness before we get back to the warp where the two would possibly have a moment where they talk amongst themselves, with Shuma's mostly dark tone about your doom, against Tzeentch's contradictory and snake-like tone. It could then instantly jump to a part in between their dialogue, as it could then just cut to them fighting in an area between the realm of Tzeentch and the Cancerverse fighting, as the battle could reach the Crystal Labyrinth of Tzeentch, where Shuma could be trapped for a moment, where it could show Shuma escaping by just shattering the whole Crystal Labyrinth, where you can then have Shuma fire a giant beam at Tzeentch, only for him just to catch and just send it back towards Shuma, and then blasting him back into the realm they were fighting in again. Then you can have the two just bantering and take to the middle for it, while parts of the warp are being while parts of the warp are just being contorted and destroyed by Shuma's mere presence and Tzeentch observing him throughout it. Then it can just show Tzeentch plotting his next idea for the great game, or it can just show Shuma coming back with all sorts of nonsense to combat Tzeentch, while Tzeentch would now just view Shuma as a pawn for his own game, as they fight. Near the end it can go in a way of showing both capturing one another, being Shuma capturing Tzeentch in a way to contain him for good and just destroys his entire presence, or for Tzeentch, he can just capture Shuma and just toss him into the well of eternity. Either way you go, it's going to be fucked up for whoever you have winning. As for the track for this, it could be a mesh of dark and ambience filled with orchestra and even a choir, just to give into the sense that these gods are just unfathomable by any means necessary. Now then, we must let everything burn now.
If I cannot save it from your failure, Father, then let the galaxy burn.
Horus, Lupercal versus Lucifer. Gods/demigods who were once born noble beings, having a bright and white color schemes, and where they were considered one of the greatest beings of their kind. Lucifer and the angels, and Horus and the Primarchs. Later on becoming fallen angels of darkness and transcending into demon kings/princes. Due to their rage towards their creators, they held a rebellion against them and rallied up other gods/demigods who were also shunned in a grand war against their gods. Their main goals also involved them defeating their gods and bringing everything in their plan to chaos, and also in their own image, and also to make everyone have freedom, choice, and liberty. Their rivals in the gods that repented and rebelled against are all power golden gods who cherish humanity and created near gods that some either joined them on their war and the other half repelled against them, by HVH and the Emperor of Mankind. They also have beings who are similar towards them and are commonly to be almost like them, Abaddon and Satan. They both were also High Lords of War, Lucifer being the god of war in some circumstances, and Horus being the chief war boss. And yes, while ultimately failed at trying to conquer their goals and lost the war, even then their presence and impacts are still being heard from to this day. Lucifer still being in SMT games after the war, Lucifer being in SMT games after the war, and is still fighting on. And Horus with the Black Legion and Lunar War still combating the Imperium. Do I really need to mention the mythology connection as well? Back on topic, this could be a very fun idea with it starting similar to the Horus Heresy cinematic trailer. Horus walking through dirt clouds of dust in the air only to see Lucifer in his human state, just watching over all of his legions, before he would just disappear. They could show a bunch of lightning strikes hitting the legions, which would then flood him with the SMT demons. While behind Horus you could have Lucifer reappear in his SMT4 design. While at first you would just be Horus clashing with the demon while the two were bantering as they fight, while you have Lucifer holding his own, as it could then show Horus getting the upper hand over this form of Lucifer. Before you can have Horus turn around and then face Lucifer's new form, being his SMT3 design, then you can have Lucifer use the Morning Star on Horus only for him just to tank without any issue, as that could be a moment where you see Lucifer go, oh shit, he is powerful. Then you can have this fight get more and more crazy, with each of them using all sorts of their abilities, like having Lucifer send parts of Horus's army towards him, as he would just slaughter them, maybe have Lucifer summon some of his demons to attack Horus, but those would be quickly dealt with the Blessing of Nurgle. Have some Traitor Legions attack Lucifer only for them to be erased in an instant, or have Lucifer give Horus the fuck off lightning, using High King, only for Horus to just tank it or redirect it towards Lucifer. Hell, show how powerful Horus is by him tanking all kinds of dark and light beams of energy, only for Horus just to send them right back at Lucifer. And you can have the environment change constantly whenever one attacks, as if it's showing their power on a complete scale. Then nearing the end, you can have a moment where both of them are just in an area similar to where Lucifer showed his true self to Nabino. Now mix it with a warp-like area with Horus watching Lucifer transcend. And during that, I just want to see a moment where you can get away referencing the Radiant Morningstar speech and Horus's "If I cannot save the galaxy from your failure" speech. And this is where you show both of them are not playing around anymore. These two want to kill each other. And where you can have all your fun begin with Horus being able to fight all the Chaos Gods and Lucifer now in his true state, where you can have all their powers and abilities come into play now. You can have Horus with powers Cold Bloodstone, where you can now just go straight for it against Lucifer, only for Lucifer just to tank it and freeze him in place, and then just summon a hail of meteors to send it back, or have Horus break free of it and just smash the meteors to pieces with his mace. Have Lucifer's fire come into place, he'd be scorching hard around Horus with him, only for Horus just to be shrugging off his attack while still going for Lucifer. Then just have a giant light and dark laser beam happen again. This time, however, Horus would be weakened from it, as you can have Lucifer now just unleashing the Morningstar once more, this time when it was used in SMT5, to end this whole thing once and for all. And that could be where your ending comes into play, whether you have the Morningstar work or not. If you have it work, you can have Lucifer looking at the remains of Horus, mostly being his ashes. As you go back to the planet Horus originally was on during the start of this whole fight, and have it to where Lucifer picks off where Horus left off. Over Horus ascending, you could have it to where he tanks the fucking Morningstar or destroys it, then just shoves his talons right into Lucifer's midsection and then just tears him in half. Then grabbing the top half of Lucifer by his head, then returning to the place where they originally started fighting, just to show him how many of his demons have fallen and have surrendered, just to show Lucifer's failure one last time before he just crushes his transcendent head. This fight can be done in 3D and potentially sprites if you wanted to, and it would perfectly show how much of an impact these two are, with just Horus being this unstoppable force and Lucifer being the immovable object, while also having amazing banter potential for both, and the track could be something similar to the One King to rule them all, but with a mix of Chaos' main theme in Dawn of War, and Eon Phase 2 in SMT5. Now then, back on track with Chaos again.
Victory brings immortality!
Khorne versus the Icon of Sin. Now then, I won't be the one doing this one actually. Chuckles, take it away.
Hey Nano, thanks for having me on here. In case you guys don't know who I am, I'm Chuckles. I have Nano out well a lot this season. I made some of the matchups, I made a lot of the thumbnails, and I even helped him with Gascal vs. Thrall, as in I remade the entire script. And I'm here to talk about my favorite match from the season, Icon of Sin vs. Khorne. So let's dive into it. So why it's so good. Let's get on to the connections. The connections are beings who are the manifestations and gods of wrath, bloodshed, and chaos, who alter/destroys reality by their mere existence, and are seen as demonic figures. They were both sealed for years, until being awoken by a chaotic force. They are also beings who are stronger than the gods of their worlds and are also feared by said gods and higher-ups. But they were finally slayed by a chosen slayer, even though they are not really dead and are still kind of alive. I know the connections aren't much, but it's actually pretty decently thematic, and honestly I go as far as to say it's the most thematic Icon matchup. Now let's discuss the fight. How I want the fight to happen is, I want it to be 3D. 2D just feels wonky to me, especially given they can't really find any like Daemon designs, and also hand-drawn just wouldn't really fit the characters, so 3D I feel like would be best. Where this fight really shines at is the potential, because it can not only be a really good Kaiju fight, but it can also be a really well done army fight. To start the fight off, I actually don't want the fight to begin with Khorne versus Icon themselves. I actually want the fight to begin with their demons, therefore it can have like a lot of potential at the beginning. For example, you can have Marauders fight Khorne Berserkers, you can have Imps and Peakies fight Blood Runners, you can have Arachnotrons fight Hellhounds or Fleshhounds, whatever they're called, you could have Macubi find Daemon Engines, Revenants find Bloodthirsters, and all around just so much more you can do with the fight. Just all around, just basically make the demonic version of Dr. Wily versus Eggman, you know? But now let me go and discuss the second part of the fight, which is essentially a Kaiju fight. Now, I don't really want to discuss it for too long because, I mean, hello, it's a Kaiju fight. It essentially writes itself. But I do have something to say on it. First off, I feel like you can have really good choreography with the fight, and also the sound effects to it can be really meaty and really good. But also, while the Kaiju fight is still taking place, you can actually incorporate the army fight into it, so where, while they're still fighting, the army fight is still happening. And lastly, you can make it to where because their powers are clashing so hard, they're warping reality and they're going through some like different layers of hell, or they're going through different dimensions while they're clashing. You can make them go to some place like Warhammer Classic or Warhammer Age of Sigmar. You can make them go to places like Classic. You can even make them go to places that are connected to those characters or connected to those series like Wolfenstein and weirdly Dungeons and Dragons. You can do all this stuff to display how much destruction and chaos that they're doing. So in this fight, you can have a surprisingly really hyping, really great reality warping-esque fight. Now it's time to go talk about the devs. I'll start with Icon first, since he's the one that's more simple to talk about. Basically, in Doom fashion, make it just super cool. Make it to where Icon rips Khorne limb from limb and make both their demons go after Khorne. And essentially make it to where Icon stands on top of Khorne's dead body, and make it to where it shows that he's the new Chaos God of Blood. As for Khorne, make it to where you think Icon has won, and you make it think to where Icon has actually killed Khorne, but Khorne's true form comes out, and it ends up towering on top of Icon. And make it where Khorne whips out his blade and slices Icon to pieces, and you can finally finish it off where Khorne beheads Icon and stabs his head right through the metal. And finally, you can make it to where Korn and Doom Demons are screaming and chanting blood for the Blood God as Korn stands triumphantly on Icon's head. All around, the potential for this fight is amazing. Like the fact that you can cram both an army fight, a kaiju fight, and counter reality warfare fight is amazing, but it'll honestly be the first time for that battle. And before I get those one comments saying it, no, the kaiju fight barely was a thing, and Ultron vs. Sigma, and also in Ultron vs. Sigma, there was barely an army fight, and it was primarily in the background, so I don't really think it counts. So yeah, I really love the matchup, it has a lot of potential, it's one of my most wanted. Please spread it, and honestly, I haven't even scratched the surface with it, because given the length I would have talked about it, it would have been like, what, a 12-minute long talk? And also, thank you, Nana, for having me on your season list. Really helps, and I really appreciate it. Oh yeah, and the chat could be unbelievably metal and based.
Vengeance, justice, and long last.
The time for talking is long past.
Zek Otterman versus Marak. Oh, I'm sorry. Users who use a special, powerful, and elemental time soul magic, who were also chosen by big magic users, as Zek Otterman being the second in command of Magnus, and Marak being the firstborn of the chosen dragons, who wanted to get into a dome of knowledge and power, and has something to do with books, the Black Library, and trying to find the Hermanus Mora. They both were a part of the highly magic-based elite cultist group, the Thousand Sons and the Dragon Verse. But this was soon changed when they betrayed their group, and by doing this to get them to be champions of a nightmarish tentacle gods that give them unbelievable amounts of power and knowledge. Later on they would feel sorry and feel miserable about their choices, and after a while they realized they were being controlled by the gods and planned to turn against them. And lastly, they have an iconic armor/helmet and are the strongest magic users in their universe. This fight can simply start off either finding a way to access the other's realm, which could most likely be Iron Man finding a way to Apotheca, and then encountering Marak. Where at first Marak would be sensing something different from Iron Man, and then can mention how he could escape Apotheca with him. This could then just show Marak using lightning against Iron Man, only for him just to catch it and contain it, and from there the fight can begin. Where it can have Marak using the environment against Iron Man, only for those to be destroyed with ease by the lightning he contained. Then have Marak try to ignite Iron Man, only for his flames to be split in half and then sent back at him like something in Dracula vs. Ganon. Then you can have Marak create ice spikes and send him right at Iron Man, only for Iron Man to send the fireball right back at him. And after that you could have a mind battle ensue between the two of them, with Iron Man being shown his past way he tried to cure his brothers, and Marak back at the Dragon War on Solstheim, only for both of them just to break out of it and unleash the fury of lightning against one another, as the environment could reflect both of them, where Marak's side can show Apotheca, and Iron Man's side can show the realm of Tzeentch. And in the background, you can have the Hermanus Mora and Tzeentch fighting. Then you could have it where Marak is explaining how they're both puppets on strings, while Iron Man is just not having what he's saying, before they go back to their clash with psychic powers and magic. And you can have the background reflect on what's going on in the main battle. When Iron Man and Marak have their spells clash off each other, you could show that Hermanus Mora and Tzeentch in the background also doing the same thing. And you could show Marak using all kinds of spells to keep Iron Man back, while Iron Man is either shrugging them off or carrying them with his own spells, of course. And you're gonna need a lightning clash of some kind between the two of them. Like, come on, it's almost their main damn moves at this point. However, near the end, I want to see either of them pull a mind game on one another, where it would basically be a giant hallucination where Iron Man would kill his brother just to save him once more, and for Marak it would show when he was defeated by the fellow dragon piece, Fallock. And for whoever you have winning, they could just break through the hallucination entirely, and go for the killing blow. Whether it be Iron Man breaking out of his hallucination, jamming his hand right through Marak's chest, then just spurting Marak away, or for Marak to break out of his hallucination and begin to electrocute Iron Man into nothing. Or they could have a death similar to that, except they didn't break out of it in time. And from there you could have it to be where after Iron Man burns away Marak, only his helmet would remain, or for Marak, once he's done electrocuting Iron Man to nothing, you could have it to where it would show his armor just drop like an empty husk. And it could show their guy in the background being triumphant or not, depending on who you had to win. This idea can have amazing banter potential with them, with two of them having moments of respect towards one another, but then dropping it for ridicule. And like I mentioned earlier about being puppets on strings, that whole bit would work as well. As for the track you could have it be a nice orchestral mix, but mixed with the feeling of the Dark Lords from Dracula vs. Ganon. But you can have it to where it also has the impactful feeling of like you can tell when they strike each other. And you can give this idea to the Spider Blender team. Now before we get to the finale, I'd like to give out some honorable mentions. Chuckles, take the first half away.
Hey, it's me, Chuckles again, and before we get into the season finale, let's go through some quick honorable mentions before we do that. We have Tzeentch vs. Lucifer, Karn vs. the Juggernaut, Zee Broly, and Darth Nihilus, the Tyranids vs. the Flood, Nurgle vs. Neklo, Lion versus Magna Defender. As for our original matchups, we have Mortarion versus Beelzebub, Caldo Drago versus Save 14, Valky versus Ezda, the Tau Empire versus the Covenant, Cybermen versus Necrons, Conrad versus Saint Batman,
Lucius versus Thresh the Unbounded, Ranor versus Potemkin, Abaddon versus Garland, Callus Typhon versus Goro Akechi, the Chaos God BR, Luther versus Commander Valen, Titus versus Marcus Phoenix, Juggles' whole idea board for League of Legends versus Warhammer, and... Juggles, why the fuck do you include all the joke ideas?
I don't fucking know.
About fucking time.
The Emperor of Mankind versus Lord English. Originally known as otherworldly/holy beings, cherubs and psychers, who in time became godlike rulers that ascended to godhood, have incredibly loyal subjects, the Primarchs and the Felt. Both have also come from non-traditional forms of storytelling, tabletop and webcomic, and this is the idea that'll probably break the budget. But for the start, open up with Lord English arriving somewhere within the warp. As you can show the Emperor at first confused by English's mere presence within the warp, as he doesn't even know of him, but would soon become more understanding of English's true intent. As once the Emperor begins to confront Lord English just instantly appear in front of the Emperor's face and then flick him away across the warp, before catching himself and reappearing behind Lord English, only for the blade to get caught by Lord English. And from there, it can go batshit crazy with whatever you want to do. You could have English punch the Emperor into a style similar to Homestuck, only for the Emperor to conjure something within the warp and then change into a TTS-like style. As now you can show Emperor getting the upper hand over English, then you can have Lord English's scepter turn into an AK-12, yes, that actually happens, and just unload the whole magazine to the Emperor, only for his blade to block or catch all the bullets and then charge towards English. And then just slash him into a Gmod style animation, where it can be janky as hell to capture the feel of it, as it can just show English being relentless on his attacks. Where it would be English attacking Emperor from behind, or attacking him from the front, or anywhere he can, the Emperor would just be tanking everything he does, or just straight up ignoring it, before the Emperor could slash English back into the warp, and also send English flying throughout it. And soon enough you can have English summon the Felt, while the Emperor would summon the Primarchs. And with those two clash, it can come back to the Big E in English, as it can be in an arm lock for a moment where it looks like it's fracturing pieces of the warp before they just break it. You can even have their battle reach the Chaos Gods, making them even feel unsafe as they watch the battle ensue. And it could constantly keep changing art styles throughout it all, or animation styles for that matter. As each hit they land against one another, it could cause different changes entirely. It could give us a KO screen for a moment before it just fakes out and shows Emperor and English still going at it. Then it could show Emperor using everything within the warp against English, while English is just tanking it and retaliating back against him. You can even get a moment where English heads back in time to kill a young Big E, only to succeed and then come back and just send it flying across the warp again, as it had no effect on the Emperor. Then he can have English kill his physical form, and again would have no effect on the Emperor, but the Emperor would be much more powerful than ragdolling English around for a bit, before you can have it to where English then regains control of the fight again. Near the end I want to have it to where English pulls to cut the fancy and speak English line, as Piggy would just send him flying across the warp. Then you can go back to Lord English, where you can have him reference you how do you expect to remember him already there, except replace it with, oh, and I've already won. Just to confuse the Emperor, as he's then just torn apart by several other Lord Englishes. As you can now have English vomit an energy beam and Emperor just incinerating him, and also destroying his own existence. And for the Emperor thing, you have it where English does the same thing, but after English thinks he wins, you get a golden claw shoved right through his chest, only with the Emperor saying you have no power here, as you can have the Emperor just summon everything, his armies, his legions, the Primarchs, as Emperor would just throw English away, leaving the rest to them, as it could show each of them just tearing away at Lord English slowly. As once it's all over, they could all just scream for the Emperor one last time, just out of sheer triumph and victory. The track potential for this is crazy. It could be a mix of piano and orchestra, but constantly switching to every other style of music you can think of for these two. And the banter for this is just fun. Just this fight is just absurd with what you can do with it. And there you all go. That's the Warhammer season. This was probably the best and worst idea I ever had, but hey, I wanted to make this. Why do you may ask? Simple. Just to show the series around. It's something a few years ago helped me get through a troubling time and stuck with me ever since due to how much I enjoyed it. And I hope that maybe because of this, some people may be curious about it. Or maybe just maybe look into it slightly. But with that said, I thank you all so much for watching this. Have an amazing day whenever you see this. Till next time.